The candles flickered against the glossy tableware, waiting for guests who never came. The dining room was dressed in silver and ivory, the kind of setting meant for laughter and clinking glasses. Instead, only silence filled the air. My phone buzzed. One new message. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us, where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us, what would you do in this situation? Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. It was from my mother. There's nothing special about you, Claire. Stop pretending tonight matters. The words made my chest tighten like a fist had wrapped around my ribs. I gripped the edge of the table, refusing to let tears fall. This was supposed to be my anniversary dinner. I had sent out invitations weeks ago. Not a single reply. Not one person walked through that door. The doorbell rang suddenly, and my heart leapt with desperate hope. But it was only the delivery guy holding the cake box, confusion on his face as he glanced at the empty room behind me. Where's everybody?" he asked. I forced a smile. "They're running late." A lie. A small one, but it burned on my tongue. When I closed the door, I stood in the quiet again, the air so heavy it felt suffocating. I whispered to myself, "Don't break." Not tonight. That was when headlights swept across the curtains. My husband's car pulled into the driveway. Relief washed through me, but also shame. How could I explain that my own family didn't think I was worth showing up for? The front door swung open and Mark Bennett stepped inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, his tie loosened like he'd come straight from a battlefield at work. His eyes scanned the empty room in one sweep, and the tension in his jaw told me he'd pieced it together. "Claire?" His voice was low, steady, dangerous in its calm. Not one of them showed? I shook my head, biting down on my lip until it hurt. Mark walked over, set his briefcase on the table, and pulled me into his arms. His chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, but he didn't waste time on anger. Instead, he flipped open the case and drew out a thick folder. "Then let's give them something to choke on," he said, laying the documents across the untouched plates and candles. I blinked at the bold lettering. My fingers trembled as I traced the seal. "Mark, what is this?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "It's ours. The deed to our new home. We signed today. You've been waiting your whole life for a place that's truly yours, and now you have it. Let your family ignore you all they want. Tomorrow, they'll see what we built without them." The weight of the paper hit me harder than any insult ever had. I pressed my hand to my mouth, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming surge of pride and vindication. The silence of the room no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like the stage had been cleared, ready for a reveal they would never forget. The next morning, sunlight poured across the driveway of the new house like it had been waiting for us. Mark parked the car, and I just sat there staring, my breath caught in my throat. White stone walls gleamed against the sky. Tall glass windows framed the front like a promise. A porch wrapped around the house with enough space for laughter, for late-night talks, for a future that felt real. I whispered, "It doesn't even feel real." Mark squeezed my hand, his thumb brushing against my skin. "It is. This is yours, Claire. This is us." We stepped out of the car. The realtor was waiting with the keys. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett," she said warmly. "This place is going to turn heads. Turn heads." She didn't even know the half of it. By noon, my phone began to buzz, not with apologies, but with sharp-edged voices. My sister Monica first. "So, I hear you're moving? Where'd you get the money, Claire? You couldn't even host a proper dinner last night." Her words clawed at me, but for once I didn't flinch. "Come by and see for yourself," I replied simply, before ending the call. Next came my mother. Linda's tone was sharp, cold. "Why are people calling me saying you're bragging about some house? Don't embarrass yourself. You've always been small, and small you'll stay." I let the silence hang before answering. "Then I guess you should come and see how small I really am." By evening, cars began pulling up. First Monica and her husband Greg in their polished SUV, smirks plastered on their faces. Then my younger brother Daniel, laughing too loud like it was all a joke. Finally, my parents, stepping out as though arriving at a theater performance. Not a family visit. They walked up the path, their eyes darting across the lawn, the columns, the sheer size of the place. Their smirks wavered. I opened the door, standing tall in the entrance. My heart pounded, but I didn't step back. "Welcome," I said, my voice calm but steady. Monica's eyes narrowed as she stepped inside, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Whose place is this?" she asked, scanning the high ceilings, the sweeping staircase. Mark came from the kitchen, a folder in his hand. "Ours," he said flatly, placing the deed on the glass coffee table. Signed, sealed, paid. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Their eyes fell on the papers, on the official seal, on our names inked bold across the page. Greg let out a low whistle. "You're kidding! This is yours?" Daniel's smirk collapsed into disbelief. "No way! Claire couldn't pull this off. She doesn't even—" My mother's voice cut through, brittle and sharp. "This is ridiculous. You're trying to play games with us. Houses like this aren't for people like you, Claire. Not for ordinary." Her words, once enough to break me, slid off like water against stone. I stood straighter, meeting her glare head-on. "You're right, Mom. It isn't for people who settle. It's for people who work, who dream, who don't need permission to matter." Mark's hand rested lightly against my back. His presence steadied me, but his words carried the final blow. "Claire doesn't just matter. She's the reason we're here. Every sacrifice, every long night, it was for this moment. And she's the one who deserves it." For the first time in years, my family didn't know what to say. Their faces flickered between shock, shame, and something that almost looked like fear. Monica's voice broke the silence, sharp but shaken. "So what now, Claire? You think a house makes you better than us?" I leaned forward slightly, my voice low but unshakable. "No, but it proves I was never less." Their gazes dropped to the floor, and the quiet stretched. I realized then that their absence at my anniversary dinner hadn't been the tragedy I thought it was. It had been a gift, an ending to the old version of me they used to dismiss. They had ignored my invitations. But life had written me a better one. As they shuffled out, their faces pale, their silence heavy, Mark turned to me, his eyes fierce with pride. "You didn't just stand quiet tonight, Claire. You stood taller than all of them. And for the first time, I felt it. I wasn't small. I wasn't invisible. I was the one holding the keys." By the next morning, word had already spread. Somehow, before the sun had fully risen, whispers of our new home had leaked out. It wasn't just my immediate family anymore. Cousins, aunts, and even neighbors were calling, their curiosity dripping through every word. One message from my cousin Amanda read, "Wait, Claire bought a mansion? Thought you were struggling last year?" I stared at the screen, heat rising in my chest. For years, they had gossiped about me behind my back, painting me as the weak one, the failure. Now they couldn't stop talking, but for the first time, it wasn't about pity. It was about disbelief. Mark noticed my clenched fists as I scrolled. "Don't waste energy on them," he said, pouring coffee. "They'll twist the story any way they want. But today they'll see it with their own eyes." He was right. We had invited the realtor back for a final walkthrough and signing. What we didn't expect was for my family to show up uninvited, cars pulling into the driveway one by one, as if they couldn't resist confirming the rumors. Linda, my mother, stepped out first. She wore her pearls like armor, her expression carefully neutral. Behind her, my father Richard trailed, eyes scanning the lawn with something between awe and discomfort. Monica and Greg came next, their SUV still shining from a fresh car wash, as though they wanted to compete. Daniel leaned against his beat-up truck, smirking, but his eyes betrayed unease. I met them at the door, no longer shrinking back. The air around me was different now, charged, almost electric. "Claire," my mother said briskly, as though my name itself was a chore. "Is it true? Did you actually buy this place?" Mark stepped beside me, his arm casually sliding around my waist. He spoke before I could. "No, Linda, we didn't buy this place. Claire did. She earned it. She owns it. This is her home as much as mine." The way he said it, direct, undeniable, knocked the smirk right off Daniel's face. Monica's jaw tightened, and for the first time my father avoided my eyes. I ushered them inside. The grand foyer seemed to swallow their arrogance. The vaulted ceilings, the chandelier, the staircase that curved like something out of a magazine, it all spoke louder than I ever could. Monica ran her fingers along the polished banister, her voice sharp. "Well, money can buy nice things, but it can't buy class." Greg chuckled beside her, but it sounded hollow, forced. I turned, my voice steady. "You're right. It can't buy class, but it can certainly expose who never had it to begin with." Her face flushed red, and for once, she had no comeback. We moved into the living room where the deed still sat on the glass table, the official seal gleaming under the light. My father finally spoke, his voice quieter than I remembered it ever being. "Claire, I didn't think you'd ever—" He stopped himself, choosing his words carefully. "You've surprised us." I almost laughed. Surprised was such a weak word for what they felt. Shock, shame, maybe even regret. That was closer to the truth. Before I could respond, the front door opened again. This time it was extended family, 2 of my aunts and a cousin who had lived their whole lives thinking they were above me. They walked in wide-eyed, gasping at every corner of the house. One of my aunts whispered to the other, not realizing I heard. "Linda told us Claire would never amount to anything. Look at this place." The word struck Linda like a slap. She stiffened, her face turning stone cold. Mark leaned in close to me, whispering so only I could hear. "You don't have to say a word. They're undoing themselves." And he was right. Every detail of the house, the marble counters, the sliding glass doors leading to the sprawling backyard, the sheer size of the rooms, was a mirror reflecting their pettiness back at them. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I walked to the table, picked up the deed, and held it in my hands. "For years," I began, my voice echoing across the high ceilings, "you told me I was nothing, that I was small, that I should stay quiet because nothing about me was special. Last night you proved it. You ignored my anniversary, ignored me. But here's the truth. I didn't need you. I never did. And this house, this life, is proof of that." The silence that followed was suffocating. No one moved, no one spoke. Their faces told the story. Shock written in my father's furrowed brows, shame tightening my mother's lips, jealousy flashing across Monica's eyes. Daniel finally broke, his voice shaky, not smug. "So what? What now? You cut us out? Pretend you're better?" I stepped closer, my tone like steel. "No, I don't need to pretend. For the first time, I don't need your approval, your fake smiles, or your empty words. I don't need anything from you. I already have more than you ever gave me." Mark's hand found mine, strong, certain. He looked at them all, his voice a final verdict. "This house isn't just walls and a roof. It's proof that Claire is more than every insult you ever threw her way. She's stronger than all of you combined." And in that moment, watching their expressions crumble, I realized something powerful. I hadn't just built a home. I had built freedom. The tension in the room clung like smoke. My family stood scattered across the polished living room, their eyes darting around as if the walls themselves were mocking them. Every corner of the house, every detail was a reminder of the lie they had clung to for years, that I was beneath them. Finally, Monica broke the silence, her voice brittle. "So you think this house makes you better than us, Claire?" I didn't flinch. "No. What makes me better is that I never needed to tear anyone else down to feel tall. I built this life by standing up when you wanted me to stay small." Her face flushed. but she looked away instead of fighting back. Linda, my mother, drew herself up, her pearls trembling slightly against her collarbone. This is all temporary. Houses can be lost. Money disappears. Families are what matter in the end. Her words, meant to wound, only made me stronger. I met her gaze without fear. Families matter, yes, but only the ones who show up. You didn't. You never did. Richard shifted uneasily beside her, guilt flickering in his eyes. For once, he didn't defend her. His silence said more than any excuse ever could. Mark placed a steady hand on my shoulder. Claire doesn't owe anyone in this room an explanation, he said firmly. She invited you here to give you a chance to see the truth for yourselves. Don't mistake that for weakness. It's the last chance you'll get. The words landed like a hammer. I saw it in their eyes. Shame. Envy. Something they couldn't mask anymore. Then came the knock at the door. I walked over, heart steady, and opened it to find neighbors standing there. Curious faces, smiling warmly. They had seen the moving truck earlier, and now they wanted to welcome us. Congratulations, one woman said brightly. This house is stunning. We've heard so many wonderful things about the Bennetts moving in. I smiled, genuine this time. Thank you. We're happy to be here. Behind me, my family stiffened. They had to stand there, powerless, while strangers celebrated me, the one they had spent years mocking. As the neighbors left, Monica muttered under her breath, "This won't last. You'll slip up." I turned to her, calm, collected. "Maybe, but if I do, I'll get back up again. That's the difference between us. You laugh when I stumble. I build when you doubt." Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she had nothing left to say. The weight of the moment pressed down on everyone. My aunts whispered behind their hands. Daniel avoided my eyes. Greg shuffled uncomfortably. Even Linda, who had always thrived on being the loudest in the room, stood frozen in silence. Mark gathered the deed from the table, slid it into the folder, and looked at them all with unflinching calm. "This is your last look. After today, you don't get to step into this house again unless Claire chooses it. And judging by how you've treated her, I wouldn't count on it." The finality in his voice cracked something inside them. My father lowered his head, shame written all over him. My mother's jaw trembled, but she held her tongue. Monica looked furious but powerless. They left one by one, their footsteps heavy against the polished floor, their silence louder than any insult they had ever hurled at me. When the last car pulled away from the driveway, I sank into the couch, the weight of years lifting off my shoulders. Mark sat beside me, pulling me close. "You did it," he whispered. "You stood taller than all of them." Tears slid down my cheeks, not from sadness but from relief. For the first time in my life, I don't feel small. I feel free, he kissed my forehead gently. That's because you finally see yourself the way I've always seen you. As the night fell and the house glowed warm against the dark sky, I realized something profound. Their rejection had been the greatest gift. It forced me to rise, to fight, to claim a life they said I couldn't have. And now, while they sat in their own homes, choking on bitterness and silence, I sat in mine. Whole, proud, unbroken. This wasn't just a house. It was a statement. I was no longer the daughter they ignored, the sister they mocked, or the woman they dismissed. I was Claire Bennett. And I held the keys to everything they swore I'd never touch.